Hey guys, it's Frederik of the FWX podcast. I'm gonna be talking about a specific kind of theme in this episode, and I'm gonna tease you for that by getting a little smaller here and tease you with some of this stuff. This includes stuff about pirates of the Caribbean, and its many sequel movies. I'm also gonna be talking about other time period action movies, like for instance The Three Musketeers. I'm also going to talk about some other stuff like The Mask of Zorro, personal favorite of mine, and we'll get into that in a moment. But first, I want to inform you guys that you can like this video. You can also subscribe to the channel, and that really helps out the podcast and the channel because when I'm talking about specifically now uh, action based on older times, and that can depend on what time, of course, whether it's in ancient times or a more modern period or somewhere in between. It varies, and I love talking about that stuff. That also includes genres, franchises, character stuff, and plot lines, and all of that. Talk a lot about stories, talk a lot about characters, also talk a lot about themes and genres, and I love to do those things. And if you want more of that, you should subscribe to the channel and the podcast, and that way you can get more of it. Also, share this with friends and family, or maybe your colleagues at your work, or maybe just here online, and you can comment down below. And when you do that, I hope you are polite and kind and friendly about that. Okay. And then finally, before we begin, I'm not a native English speaker, so if I get something wrong, if I mispronounce something, if I lose my train of thought, all perfectly normal and human to do. So let's get this thing started. So I'm gonna get back below here. Below start. So I want to talk about uh, both pirate movies and time period action pieces. And let's first start with one of the most iconic franchises of all time, the Pirates of the Caribbean, or Caribbean. And by the way, if you are from that region in the world and you know the right pronunciation of that, please put it down below in the comments. I want to know from you what is the right way to really say it. Is it Caribbean or Caribbean? Okay, let's get this thing started. So, at the very beginning of this century, we got those pirate movies, especially those first three movies, The Curse of the Black Pearl, That Man's Chest in '06, and then At World's End in '07. And those resembled stories around Captain Jack Sparrow, Elizabeth Swann, and Will Turner, portrayed by three amazing actors, and with a steady and heavy cast. And with heavy, I mean mostly A-listers and other people that are extremely good at their job as an actor. But then we also got a few years later those sequel movies. So, by the way, I think I'm actually gonna cut to me for this. According to many people, depending on what they like, it's either three movies, four or five, depending on what they like. So I guess it could be seen as a trilogy because those initial characters do grow up. They get on with their lives and their stories, and that is very interesting stuff. and it did pretty well at its inception. Okay, let's get back to it. So those three movies came out. I'm gonna just read the blurbs for a moment. Will, a blacksmith, joins forces with Captain Jack Sparrow, a pirate, to rescue the love of his life from Jack's associates who have kidnapped her, suspecting she has his medallion. That's from The Curse of the Black Pearl. And in the second movie, That Man's Chest, we have Captain Jack Sparrow seeks the heart of Davy Jones, a mythical pirate, in order to avoid being enslaved to him. However, others, including his friends Will and Elizabeth, want it for their own gain. And then number three, at World's End, Will Turner and Elizabeth Swan team up with Barbossa to rescue Jack Sparrow from the clutches of Davy Jones. The Flying Dutchman's ghost ship is all set to create trouble on the seven seas. So that's the initial trilogy. There's more than these three, like I said, depending on what you like from these movies. I think the key words for these movies is suspension of belief. Because, and I'm actually going to come back to me for another moment. So, the number one thing about these movies is that they're based in history. And actually, to give you a bit of a timeline here, I'm not going to do a full timeline explainer here with these movies because the age of piracy stretches out throughout history. There have always been pirates, but there was a kind of a golden era moment for them. And that was in, I would say, especially from 1700 to 1725. But there have been other pirates before. So I think the key moments for piracy would have been 1650 to 1750, like a full century. I guess you could call it the century of piracy. Uh, in this case, with these movies, especially the West Indies, another name for the Caribbean, a specific part of it though, based around the Antilles. But the Caribbean is, of course, much larger than that. Uh, but it also stretches to other places, like we get to see in that third movie. Okay, let's get back to it. Because there's more stuff that I want to talk about with you guys here. There we go. So, like I said, Pirates, number one, two, and three. Then there's number four, where we dip more into this pirate lore with one of the most important, supposed important pirates ever. Um, Supposedly, these pirates all really lived, but I'm referring to who Ian McShane plays in number four, and that is Blackbeard. By the way, McShane, amazing actor. I'll get to some photos here to give you guys a better image. Where do we have a good one here? So here he is. Besides supposed daughter he has, played by Penelope Cruz. And yeah, Edward Teach is said to be the most feared pirate of his time. And there's a whole manner of stories around him, which includes some that Jack in this movie actually talks about in order to gain an audience and flatter Blackbeard Edward Teach or Thatch about this. And I personally really love these movies, all five of them, to be honest. Now, when you think about the how good and how practical and however, that's all on you guys. But personally, I really like these movies. This one was one of the movies that I saw in preparation for this episode, of course. And then there's number five as well, Dead Men Tell No Tales, with ghost pirates, which is kind of a legacy movie. And I'll read the blurb for you to know that. To break the curse of the Flying Dutchman, Captain Jack Sparrow and Henry Turner, that's Will Turner's son, embark on a mission to find the Trident of Poseidon. They also try to stop Captain Salazar, who intends to rule the seas. So, this is of ghost pirates, and actually, let's get a little bit further into the pirate lore here. So, with the initial first movie, that is all based in of itself. And for those who don't know, this is based on a ride at, I think it's Disney World, the Pirates of the Caribbean or Caribbean. Again, let me know what the proper pronunciation is. And so this is a story in of itself with those characters, especially the first movie. And then they dip into the pirate lore with Davy Jones, played by the amazing Bill Nye, who you will know from many different projects. In this one, like I said, he plays Davy Jones, and that's Mr. Calamari face over here. Let's get a Squid's face. It's a decent movie, to say the least. And it stretches the personal story of these characters along with that pirate lord that I'm talking about right now. And then we get into a number three as well. And we get into a bit more of the world building with the East India Trading Company and the characters like Tia Dalma and Calypso, who are supposedly one and the same character, like she's seen here. Another decent movie. And part of why I'm talking about all of this is because personally, and I'm gonna come to me again. Personally, I really want another Pirates movie. Not even necessarily one from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, but just any. Like, and the reason why I want it, it kind of explains why we like the kind of pirate stuff, is because it's about the chase. It's about the thrill of the moment. That is what a pirate was supposedly really after, besides rum and gold. It's the temptation of a life unlived to, in their case, sail the seven seas and plunder at ease. I'm almost intentionally rhyming here. Sorry, guys. But seriously, I want another Pirates movie. Doesn't have to be one of the Caribbean anymore, because I'm gonna get into that right now. All right, here we go. Uh, I said, here we go. All right, so like I said, number three, this one gets into that. Well, Stranger Tides is about Blackbeard, most feared pirate ever known. Uh, I've been getting some comments lately about talking about games. So let's talk about games in a moment. I'll get to that. Um, so this is number four. This is, despite what people say online, rating this movie a decent movie. I really like it. It's the latest one. Dead Man Tell No Tales. That really takes I'm sorry for the pun, a deep dive into salty waters. It's got some redeeming qualities though, mostly because of the lead characters in this. Still get Johnny Depp. You get Javier Bardem as Salazar. This is a good cast and crew movie. You get someone portraying the son of Will and Elizabeth. And then, of course, there's rumblings about a sequel or a reboot or a retelling of some sort. And so, like I was saying, I don't necessarily want another one of these, but I wouldn't mind anyway either. So, I'm open to seeing something interesting. I've heard tell that Margot Robbie might be tied to a new Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which sounds interesting as hell to me. So, okay. But then I thought it never happened. But then recently, there was a new pirate movie that came out. It's called The Bluff, and it takes place also in the Caribbean. I'll read you from the blurb. A Caribbean woman gets her secret past revealed when her island is invaded by vicious buccaneers. And that's an interesting but vague information, although it's got some stellar actors in here. You got Priyanka Chopra playing the lead. The name, she's got several names in this movie, but mostly known as Ursel Bodden. You got Carl Urban in the villain role. You got, and this is an interesting one, someone from the Rings of Power TV series that portrays a role in this one, Ismail Cruz Cordova, as the husband of Priyanka's character. And then Tamara Morrison as well, who plays the quartermaster for Carl Urban's character. And a few others as well that I don't really know about. Um, and so this one I saw last night. And there's a meaning about this. The bluff is a kind of hideout kind of thing in the movie. Personally, I really liked this movie. Like I said, I want more pirate stuff, so I hope that this happens. And also, a big difference with any normal pirate things is that this takes place quite a while later than that golden era that I told you about. Because this takes place in like the middle of the 19th century. I'll check in with you guys for a moment by getting to the Wikipedia page for a second. Not to redo anything completely, but because there's the info exactly. Here's the reason why it's called the Bluff. Highest part of the Cayman Islands, a British overseas territory in the Caribbean Sea. So it tells the story of a woman named Ursel Bodden who has lived a good, happy life. But she also used to be known as Mariam or Bloody Mary, who used to be an enslaved person by the East who worked for the East India Company until she was inducted into piracy. I'll say it like that. Yeah. And then we get those other characters. Ismael Cruz Cordova plays her husband in this. He's a Puerto Rican actor, as it says here. Of course, get back to some pictures. Mr. Carl Urban, you will definitely know from his roles. There's a picture of him from his many roles as both the Butcher on the Boys TV series, and then, of course, as Eomer from The Lord of the Rings, and then some other projects as well, of course, like in the Star Trek franchise. So he's a charismatic actor, with a lot of range. I would say the same about Priyanka Chopra-Jonas too, by the way. And she portrays an absolute badass in this movie. So don't get destroyed by any numbers or critics or whatever they say about this movie. Go watch it. It's really good. Speaking of, this was co-produced by the Russo brothers, who did, of course, the Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Civil War movie. And then, of course, a couple other Marvel movies as well. So this was a recent addition. It's better than those ratings say. Again, maybe this is just me hoping that we get stuff more like this. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So there's a few more. I'm actually going to cut to me again. So there's a few more similar kind of movies in what I like to call time period action adventure movies. And a huge part of what I like about those is that there's a lot of sword fighting, fencing, and fencing like in really taking people out, not like the sport itself where you're performing it for an audience. So let's get into that. Uh, there's a movie here that I found that I actually have at home here. It's called Master and Commander: The Foresight of the Sea. It's of Russell Crowe. I'll read you the blurb for a moment, because this is also a different kind of movie. In May of 1805, during the Napoleonic Wars, British Captain Jack Aubrey of the HMS Surprise orders his team to drown, seize, or char the French privateer Acheron. But he realizes soon that the task is tough. And so this is also from that old period where we got those in first Pirates of the Caribbean movies, because it's from 2003. And this one also won a good couple of awards. Either nominated, standing here in French, but anyway. And also, this has a stellar cast. You got Russell Crowe as the lead role. Paul Bettany is in this. Billy Boyd, one of the other Lord of the Rings characters, specifically. I'm trying to think of his name. It's not Sam. It's not Frodo. It's not. Uh, it's Pippin. He played Pippin in Lord of the Rings. Yes. And who else is in this as well? You got James Darcy in this, and then a few other roles that I don't really know. Okay. So According to the ratings, more than a decent movie. In fact, that's why it won a couple of a good couple of awards. So very much still in that kind of piracy slash time period action vibe that I really like. Let's get to the next one. The Three Musketeers, which very much, and also I have to say here, unlike with the previous stuff, this is based on adaptation, but also really leans into that time period action aspect that I'm talking about here. It's got a great cast. I would say this is a very fun movie. Maybe not decent, maybe not any. It wouldn't win any awards or anything like that, but it's just a very fun time period action piece. So don't be threatened by those ratings right there, because this has got a stellar cast anyhow. You got, and of course, this talks about the original legends. Oh my God! I'll continue, but I noticed something about this movie for a moment, so I'll read the blurb here. D'Artagnan and the three musketeers must face off with the sinister Richelieu, the Duke of Buckingham, and the traitors Milady in order to stop France from attacking England. Another thing that I noticed that I didn't think of any time that I've seen it before, this is a Paul W.S. Anderson movie, and I've always thought I've never seen one of his movies, but I have. So again, there are many iterations of the Three Musketeers. There's some couple of others here as well, but this one is absolutely star-studded with the roles here. You got Logan Lerman as D'Artagnan. Mila Jovovich plays Milady de Winter. You got this guy that I talked about before a little, Orlando Bloom, who had a huge career in yachts. Kind of fell off the last couple of years, but still a huge favorite of mine back in the day. From the Pirates and Lord of the Rings, and then Kingdom of Heaven is also decent. Troy as well. And now he's been going for some more interesting roles like this one, a deep cover, which is one I still have to see. Interestingly enough, another person in here from the same franchise, Ian McShane. Okay, let's get back to where I was. Of course, Orlando, longtime fan. Myself, oh hell, he's almost 50. Yeah, so star-studded cast was explaining. Logan Lerman, Mila Jovovich. Athos is played by Matthew McFadden. You will know from Succession, of course, but also as um, the guy with the long name with the X on the end in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. Uh, Also, of course, probably his most known role in a movie from the Pride and the Prejudice movie, or one of them. There have been many of those as well. And then a few more interesting stuff from the last couple of years. Also, decent actor. Then you get Luke Evans, who plays Aramis. Yet another LOTR, a Hobbit actor that I really like. Amazing actor. That I love seeing in action stuff, from a Dracula Untold to the Fast and the Furious franchise, which I spoke about earlier in a previous video that you can find up there, which has a complete explanation of the timeline of the Fast and the Furious. He's in one of my favorite Lord of the Rings universe movies. That is the Desolation of Smaug, which is how you say it, along with other actor Orlando Bloom and a couple of others as well. He's been doing some interesting stuff in recent years as well. Then possibly one of the greatest villain actors of all time, Christoph Waltz. You will know him definitely from Inglourious Bastards and his other Tarantino work, or as the latest version of Blofeld in the Daniel Craig Bond movies. I also made a video about that. You can check that out above or after this video if you want. And he was also in Alita Battle Angel, which is one of the few action movies that both my parents really like. Funny enough. Okay, and then there's just a few more actors. You got the late great Ray Stevenson in this movie as well as Porthos. You may have seen him in Ahsoka or in Rome or as the Punisher at one time or in other roles as well. He, crazy enough, he was also in Triple R. I think. Oh, that's just how I will say it. Crazy good movie from what I've heard. This would be totally in my leeway, and I really should just get to the point of watching that movie because I have an upcoming idea for an episode that I really want to talk about, but I will get to that at that point. Okay, and then a fellow Frederick as the King Louis XIII, Freddie Fox. So, like I said, Three Musketeers, based on the based on the book by Dumas. There have been many different versions over the couple of years. And most recently, there's a French version that came out. That's this one right here, Les Trois Musketeers. And I'm sorry if my French is confusing. One of the reasons why I really love this movie actually is because my the good dear Orlando Bloom, one of my biggest action favorite actors, plays the villain in this movie, the Duke of Buckingham, and it's so swarmy and awesome and bittersweet to see him in that role. Yes. Also, costume wise, you can't go wrong with these movies. There's also a crazy sequence in Venice at the very beginning of the movie. We get to see some crazy shit. And of course, maybe for me, the biggest reason, because I'm a huge fan of a good sword fight. There's a lot of that in this movie, of course. Uh, I want to explain something for a moment that I have to cut to me for. So, oftentimes, a musketeer usually fights with the very thing called a musket. It's a form of a gun or a rifle in this case. But in this movie, or movies, or pieces of other art, they are often portrayed as sword fighters, duelists with specific specializations. Let's actually get to some of those specializations because I want to tee that into something here. So, here's a good example of this. Here's a picture of the four of them. So, four musketeers kind of have a specialization in of themselves. Porthos, as portrayed by Ray Stevenson, is way more brutal and uses heavy and blunt kind of weapons, while for the more precise, sharp things, we could go with Luke Evans's Aramis, and then I think I messed up the names here for a moment. So Stevenson is definitely Porthos. Lerman is D'Artagnan. I'm gonna get to those names for a second because I want to get that right. Yes, I was right. Aramis, and then Athos, and with McFadden. It's a bit perplexing because McFadden is barely visible in the looks here. I guess the big uh, bad thing about this movie is that they're all speaking with an English accent, or barely. I know for certain that Stevenson and Lerman are not Brits, so they had to do some kind of transatlantic English that they speak, which also kind of sounds like how I speak because it's a mix of stuff. Yeah, let's get to some other stuff. Similar to this movie with a bit of an older cast is the movie of The Man in the Iron Mask from 1998. This is also based on one of Alexandre Dumas' stories. Here's the blurb. In 17th century France, the four musketeers devised a plan to replace the widely hated King Louis XIV, the Sun King, with a twin brother who has been imprisoned for the past 6 years with an iron mask on his face. And this is a stellar cast as well. You have the King and the Iron Mask Man, played by DiCaprio. You have Malkovich in here as Athos, Jeremy Irons as Aramis, Gérard Depardieu plays Porthos, Carol Byrne as D'Artagnan, Peter Sarsgaard is in this as well. Amazingly enough, and one I didn't know, Hugh Laurie, Mr. House, is in this movie as well. And I wanted to add this movie despite not really having seen it myself, only bits and pieces, is because it really leans into the time period action idea. And just like with the Four Musketeers and another Alexandre Dumas adaptation, uh, Dumbbell or not, I personally don't really know. But I love speaking about this because I had to bring this up in case of this. I try not to look too hard at the ratings, but they're also not exactly ignorable. There have been some other lackluster things in the last couple of years. This includes Beyond the Mask from 2015, another action adventure time period piece from years ago, with a somewhat stellar cast. The one person you will know here is John Rhys Davies, another Lord of the Rings actor. By the way, here is the blurb. In a bid to regain his reputation and to win the heart of the woman he loves, William Reynolds, William Reynolds, an assassin of the East India Company, attempts to impede a plan of the colonists. So, if I'm not mistaken, this takes place in America. Uh, let's get to a bigger picture for a moment. It's kind of a forgettable movie, but I remember seeing it years ago. And what I found to be a little interesting about this is that it leans into that vigilante idea of someone fighting against the oppressors for the people who have it less, be it a minority or the poor or people who just have less in their lives. And I still like that idea, so that's kind of appealing. But unfortunately, it did less than that. Oh, yeah. Part of the reason why I thought this was more of the colonial times, American colonial times. I kind of see a hint of it here in this picture in the background. There's an American flag in there. Okay, let's continue. There's a few more like this. There's actually another one I just thought of with one of the two biggest uh, actors, especially action actors in the world. Arnold showed up in a movie a couple of years ago, also around the colonial times. Ah, yeah, there it is. It's kind of similar to one I said before, just called Iron Mask, and it's with Arnold and with the incredible Jackie Chan, of course. Huh. Two massive action actors, and this movie, to be honest, is not good at all. I remember watching it and kind of tuning it out because it's not fantastic at all. The ratings really include this. Yeah, they're kind of the only one really known actors in this. The others I just don't know. I'll read to you what the blurb says though. On his journey to the Russian Far East, an English traveler enters China where he makes breathtaking discoveries, meets with deadly martial arts masters, and encounters the king of all dragons. Ooh. Yeah, so this is basically like if action adventure and martial arts had a baby together with a timepiece, a really, not to get all sexual in this, but ménage à trois, likely. Uh, don't show your kids this. My bad. There's another franchise that very much leans into the action time period piece that I absolutely love. Also from years and years ago, both The Legend of Zorro and The Mask of Zorro. And these two movies are two that really ignited my love of this kind of genre. Yeah, let's go with genre, where we get a lot of sword fights, we get a great story, we get, well, in this case, a great story, and also just like social issues and folklore at the same time as well. You notice that when I was talking about the pirates stories as well, is that it dips into tales of people that were trying to do a good thing or a bad thing, very much into the gray as well, with motivations and all of that. And the Mask of Zorro and the Legend of Zorro are another two of those movies, and I love them. They really put up some of my favorite stuff of so many times ago. And this was also one of those very first movies that I saw that I absolutely fell in love with. So, for those who don't know, I'll read from the book what it is about. Don de la Vega sets out as the Zorro to avenge his wife's murder and find his daughter. During his mission, he is aided by his successor, Alejandro, who also has his own agenda. And of course, it's about the tale of Zorro, which is Spanish for fox, and it takes place in the California of I think the 19th century. Let's check on that for a moment, actually. I want to be sure about that. In 1821, that's the year it takes place. It's apparently also based on it's it's based on something. Yet another adaptation is what I meant. And it's got some great character actors in this as well. Of course, Mr. Antonio Banderas as the successor with Alejandro Murrieta. You have the incredible Anthony Hopkins, who you will definitely know from many different movies, including, of course, maybe the most famous one of all, The Silence of the Lambs, and then also Hannibal, of course, and then many other stuff in previous years. I did not know, now that I'm checking his biography, that he's been married that much. Again, one of the most legendary actors in the world. Still working, by the way, at the age of 88, and born on the last day of the year. Holy hell. Okay. And then, of course, as one, and this is crazy to me, Catherine Zeta Jones plays the female lead in both movies as Elena Montero, daughter of Don Rafael Montero, played by Stuart Wilson in this. And the interesting thing for me with Catherine Zeta Jones is that I thought for so long, like Zeta sounds kind of Oriental. So I thought for a long time that maybe she was a Spanish actress. But no, she is not. She's Welsh. My bad. Also, Oscar actress. You will definitely know her from stuff. Most recently, like Wednesday, where she plays a prominent role. Just some recent stuff. Holy hell, she was in Titanic. I didn't even know that. Oh wait, that's not the Titanic movie I thought it was. My bad. And then many other stuff as well. Entrapment of Sean Connery, Terminal, an Ocean's movie, Red 2. Cool. Yeah, so many great actors in this movie. And another one I want to mention here in a moment. And I'll check for the others for a second. The other one I want to mention here is Matt Letcher. You might know him from stuff, including Narcos, one or two seasons, and he played the very famous uh, villain from the DC comics, the Reverse Flash, where he was really excellent in both The Flash and in Legends of Tomorrow. The two shows I love talking about, by the way. He was in 13 Hours. Yeah, excellent actor. Like I said, these movies are practically immortal. So yeah, I explained what this movie was about. So this is the inception of the idea of Zorro, the birth of Zorro, to say so, or reborn rather, because it's there's a succession in this, and there's a just a term for this kind of movie. It's called a swashbuckler, which is heavily sword oriented. But of course, Zorro is not just about sword fighting; it's about coming up for the people and learning stuff about sacrifice and love and community and being there for the people that we care about and all of that. Okay, let's get into the sequel of that, The Legend of Zorro, which came out in '05. This includes the both of them, Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Let's get also Rufus Sewell in this, as well as a French baron called Armand. You will definitely know him from many movies and other projects, like most recently The Diplomat. It's been a lot of stuff. A Night's Tale, The Man in the High Castle, The Holiday, one of my favorite comedy movies, and a bunch more stuff. Oh, no way. This really went over my head for so long. His first, second name is my first name. Funny. And then also, amazingly, an actor I think is fabulous, Mr. Michael Emerson. You will definitely know him from Lost. And then the thing I learned him from is Person of Interest. Fantastic TV series. If you're really into action and spies and vigilantes, and New York takes place for the most part in New York. I'll talk about that maybe in the future. It's got excellent scores. For those who don't know, this was made by both Nolan brothers, Christopher and John, and then also in uh, co-produced by J.J. Abrams. This is one of the better things that he has made. So Emerson appears as a role as one of the Pinkerton detectives in this movie. Okay, so I'll read the blurb of the second movie here. When he sets off on a lethal escapade, Zorro realizes he is stuck between a promise he made to his wife and his responsibility towards the residents of California. And I want to check something about this movie for a moment. Because the first movie was in 1821, and this one was in 1850. So a whole ton of years later. It's a weird way to say it, but it's pretty much that. So a full 29 years later. That's crazy. And then again, this leads into something I want to talk about with you guys for a second for myself. Uh, Something very personal. Uh, it's also kind of sad. So, me as a kid, years ago, uh, in Belgium, the schools close on 12 on Wednesdays. And for years, I went to my grandparents to stay there for a while. And I watched with my grandpa the one of the original Zorro series. And I love doing that. And the reason why I say it's sad is because sadly my grandpa is no longer here. And of course, that brings up memories, many great memories. And I loved spending time with my grandpa. I loved watching that series. I believe it was with Douglas Fairbanks in the lead role. It was that old black and white, one of the few black and white things I've ever seen in my life. But still, amazing TV series. That was kind of a tradition for me and him, but he also used to watch it with my mom, um, my grandpa, meaning my mom's father. And yeah, it was a tradition for her, for me. I love doing that. I love that character. And also, to bring it back to what we're talking about here, uh, the existence of vigilantes and people coming up for the people is just such a deep rooted thing for me. And I don't usually make it this political on this podcast, but this is very much a thing that needs to happen today. That I'm not talking about vigilantes here, by the way, but like standing with people, being there for them when they need it, and then making it better by speaking up and doing things. For instance, starting a podcast, or you get a Substack where you talk about the political stuff, which is something I also do. You can check that out if you want. Okay, let's continue with one final thing here. So, like I said, I have a lot of love for the Zorro movies, both, and then that series I just talked about on a more emotional term. And then a good couple of years later, because this is from the aughts, we got a franchise, or I'm guessing this was around the same kind of time, because it's part of a franchise that I have talked about before on the channel, on the podcast, and that is the Shrek universe. And when you hear this, you know where I'm going with this. So there's a character in the Shrek universe that embodies a lot of Zorro. And of course, I am talking about Puss in Boots, which is a very interesting character, originally a folklore figure, and also just like with Zorro, voiced, in this case, just voiced by Antonio Banderas. And yeah, so there's this animated version of the folklore figure, Puss in Boots, first in the Shrek movies, from the second one until currently, because, well, who doesn't love a pretty, cute kitty? I am also a sucker for, like, little sweet kittens. And of course, I've talked about this movie quite a lot, especially when with the animated stuff. That is The Last Wish. Excellent movie from a few years back. With, of course, Antonio Banderas in that role, and then also a few others. Actually, this has a murderous row of great actors, from Antonio to the villain of this movie, voiced by John Mulaney, the comedian, but also voice actor as Jack Horner. And this is full of folklore figures, like I've said before on a different episode, including an interesting new character voiced by Harvey Guillen, Perito, the little dog in this movie. That's the small one here. And you'd think for an animated movie that this isn't that fantastic, but it is. It's fantastic gal, of course, deep in diving into that fantasy. And this also reminds me yet again of something that my grandpa used to say. So, and this is kind of part of why I do this podcast. Uh, he was a great storyteller. He used to tell me stories, and my siblings as well, stories of a family dealing with folklore figures, and also in a great big black forest full with animals that could talk, animals that could speak, same thing, and many figures like Puss in Boots and others. And I also want to mention here, like I said, amazing cast: Banderas, Guillen, Mulaney, Florence Pugh has a role in this. She's amazing. Leo Coleman is in this as well. And then there's this one, Wagner Moura. So his star has been on the rise for a good couple of years, and he portrays actually, I think, one of the most interesting roles. The wolf in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I have to say, in terms of villains, one of the absolute best of the last couple of years. Absolutely terrifying, but also fascinating. And maybe I'll struggle over this again, but as I like to say it, El Lobo Muerte, the Wolf of Death, which also feeds in again to another folklore aspect, a thing that I think about. Uh, there's this movie that I saw back when my grandpa was still around, where it's an animated movie, but all the characters are not voiced with words, but with sounds, specifically instruments. And I'm forgetting right now the name. I remember researching this before a long time ago for another episode. And so basically, in that movie, there's all these different instruments that voice the characters, and there's a terrifying use of the wolf in that movie. And I want to put that to the test right here because of this role by Wagner. By the way, he had an amazing role recently in The Secret Agent, the Brazilian movie. Of course, you might also know him by his Narcos role of playing Pablo Escobar. Yeah, I am just a sucker for his work. The animation in that movie is fantastic. Like just the whole idea. Let's turn back to Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Excellent movie. And yeah, you think animation? Really? It is absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna close out with this actually, because like I was explaining, Puss in Boots is basically Zorro if it was a cat. Of course, mixed in with all that folklore. That comes back to what I was talking about, and uh, it's personified as well. If you watch the movie Last Wish in particular, at one point, Kitty Softpaws Sama Hayek's voiced character hands him a little dagger, and you know what? I'm not gonna explain any further. I'm not gonna spoil it any further. You really have to watch it for yourself. Okay, here's where I'm gonna cut it off, guys. So thank you so much for watching and following this episode of the FWX podcast. I love talking about this stuff. I hope you guys find this as well. And so before I go, a couple more things. You can like this video, and you can also follow us here. You can subscribe to the channel and the podcast, and that also helps the other podcasts where I talk about music, or in this case, a lot of different stuff when it comes to folklore or to uh, action genres, uh, movies at large. Mostly the stuff that I really like. That I like to talk to you guys too. The feed series, anything that I like when it comes to those things. I cover a lot of franchises. Yeah, you're gonna find all of that. So, guys, thank you so much. So, again, don't forget to like and subscribe, but also you can share this with friends and family or your colleagues at work, or maybe just here in the video itself, and you can comment down below. And again, tell me in the comments if you want another Pirates movie, whether from the POTC movies or just another one as well. And then finally, thank you so much for everything. We've been getting a bit more growth lately. So I want to thank you for all of that. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and I hope to see you in another one soon. See ya.